All right, so I am here talking about men expressing their feelings once again. I know I've done multiple posts and I've done a video on it already, but there's really more to talk about. This is a really important topic, and the reason I'm inspired to talk even more about this is because, even with my last video, there are still men who are justifying expressing feelings, right? And one of the comment threads that I have seen from men that are commenting is like, yeah, okay, it's wrong for a man to express feelings when he's being like really emotionally irresponsible, right? Like when he's just like complaining and dumping it on a woman and just not being fully emotionally responsible, like in the same way that I would teach women to be emotionally responsible, right? Where they're containing their feelings. They're not putting blame on our man or anything like that. It's not about neediness. It's not about trying to get an outcome. It's just about being fully vulnerable. But look, that's still a problem. It's still a problem, and I get it because I've used that exact same thing when I was first learning about polarity. I said the exact same thing because that was what I was doing, right? I was sometimes vulnerable with my woman, and when like I was expressing my emotions, and when I did, it was fully emotionally responsible in the sense that I wasn't blaming her or trying to seek outcomes or dumping on her or anything like that. So no problem there. But it's still a problem because it's still depolarizing the relationship. So if you're a man, right, here's the thing. If you're a man in the relationship, you have, or you should have, your inner vision for the relationship. And that inner vision, most important part, is your perfect inner vision of a polarized relationship where your woman is always in her feminine and you are always in your masculine as the man, right? And that's your responsibility to be leading the relationship towards. That is your responsibility to be leading your woman towards. And if you're not taking that responsibility, then you're not being a man in the relationship, right? If you are making the excuse that it's okay to just share all your feelings as long as you're, expressing them, we'll call it responsibly, then why can't your woman like lead a whole bunch of the time? Why can't she say, like, as long as she's not leading with blame or like that controlling energy, why can't she just be like, hey, let's go on a date, get your best pair of pants and your best shirt, and I'm gonna take you out on a date, right? Is that the kind of relationship you want? I mean, if it is, great. If that's what you and your woman want, you want a totally depolarized relationship where you're both leading and you're both expressing your feelings. Hey, I'm not here to tell you how to lead your relationship. If you don't, if that's really what you both want and that makes you both happy, that's fine. But what I will say is that you are really limiting your relationship in a big way. You're really limiting it. And the reason why I get this, because I've lived this too. So I'm speaking from experience here. I'm never just speaking from like a conceptual understanding. I'm speaking because I've lived it. I've lived pretty much every part of this path. So, before my feminine energy was fully integrated, right, where it's just coming out as a feeling of devotion, like wanting to lead my wife with devotion. I would want to be vulnerable and be expressive in that way, and I was totally kind of cool with her leading, right? It didn't really bother me that much, and so I know the reasons why it doesn't bother other men so much, because I've experienced that too. I get it. It doesn't bother you much because you're not fully integrated. And if you're not, that's fine. No, not being judgmental about it, but I want you to see that there's a problem with that. It's you are operating from wounding and not even seeing it. You're not even seeing how you're wounded. Just like a woman who's leading, even if it's not from like a really control freak kind of leading, she's not really fully integrated, right? Because when you are, as a man, you're actually, really paying, you're in your body and you're paying attention to how your body feels, it's going to feel irritating when your woman does that, right? When she leads, even if it's not coming from a controlling place. And the reason it feels irritating is because your body's warning you that there's something wrong in the relationship, that your woman is doing something that's depolarizing things, and your body's telling you, hey, you need to fix this shit, right? You need to get your act together and start leading this relationship properly so that she stops doing that. But the thing is, if you're not fully integrated as a man, you might not even feel that. You might not even be aware of that. You might be totally disassociated from that feeling. And that's what really shifted for me, right? Like really a year and a half ago, roughly, maybe a bit more, where, sometimes certainly it would be irritating if my wife led me, depending on the energy that she's doing it with. But sometimes it would just be like, okay, good. Now I don't have to do that. I can just be lazy and kind of be like a blob and not do anything because she's got it handled, right? Whereas once I made that shift where I really started to feel devotion for her, and I felt that sense of responsibility as the man in the relationship, right? It's my responsibility to lead this. It's my responsibility to lead towards polarization. It's my responsibility to create this inner vision. Once I started to feel that sense of responsibility, I no longer had any urge to express my feelings anymore. And it became really irritating to, not really, it could be really irritating, but at least slightly irritating when my wife would do any kind of leading at all, any kind, right, at all. And I could feel it. I was fully aware of how that felt in my body because, I now had this inner vision of what I wanted, and I now felt that sense of responsibility to be leading. And whenever that was messed with, well, my body was telling me things are getting messed with and you need to fix this, right? So if a man is still in that place of like, hey, it's totally okay for me to be all vulnerable and express all my feelings as long as I'm like not dumping them on her or blaming them. Okay. But I hope you're okay with your woman leading then. I really hope you're okay with her telling you to get your best pair of pants, or more appropriately, your best dress, because that's essentially what you are creating in the relationship, the depolarization. Where you're both a man, or you're both a woman, or maybe you're just the woman, right? That's what you are creating. If it's okay for you to be in a feminine state some of the time, then it's okay for her to be in a masculine state some of the time, right? So really ask yourself if that's what you want. Really ask yourself, like, that would completely drive me crazy. And if it is what you want, like, I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can have a depolarized relationship and it can still be okay, right? You can still love each other, and if you're both emotionally healthy, relatively, it can go okay. There can be some intimacy, sex life can still be all right. If you're, if you're really healthy and good at communicating and stuff. But man, you are really selling the relationship short. Like, I just, now with where I am, and I compare myself to where I was, I'm like, what the fuck was I doing? Honestly, like, I cannot believe that I was living that way. And back then, it's not like it was terrible, right? Like, my relationship was still relatively decent compared to most relationships for the most part. I mean, we'd still get in big fights every so often, but it was still pretty decent. But it's comparing that to now, and then comparing that to even like where we're going and how much better it's going to be a year from now, or 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. It's just not even comparable. So I really want men to be thinking about this and thinking about what are you really responsible for? If you don't feel that sense of responsibility to do everything possible to polarize the relationship, where the hell are you leading it? Where the hell are you leading it? Right? That's what's the most important thing in the relationship, because it's not just about like, taking care of the finances and, making big decisions to ease your woman's burden and all that stuff. This is ultimately about healing, right? It really is. And when a man really focuses on leading the relationship and polarizing the relationship as much as possible, where it's like, nope, I'm not going to do that thing because I know that's going to depolarize things. So I'm not going to do it because I'm responsible for keeping things polarized and polarizing things further. Once he starts doing that, he's going to essentially heal himself by becoming increasingly masculine, becoming increasingly dominant. And he's going to help his woman heal further by pushing her further and further. Pushing might sound like the wrong word, but it's essentially what's happening is you're polarizing her further and further into her feminine, and giving her the opportunity to heal more and more stuff, right? That's coming up for her, right? Because the more that you polarize, the more stuff that comes up to heal. That's why most men and women are either kind of androgynous, or why like women are quite masculine, or why men are quite feminine. It's because they got a lot of trauma bullshit that they are not dealing with. And the reason they're not dealing with it is because it's scary. It's really uncomfortable. And it's often easier to stay in excuses and be like, hey, I'm just gonna, it's totally fine if I'm like crying half the time and being vulnerable half the time. And for a woman who's saying like, hey, it's totally fine if I'm just like leading a bunch of the time, right? That's safe. That's safe, because then a woman gets to stay in control, and that feels safe for her. I mean, safer than actually dealing with her shit. Like, she'll obviously feel way safer once she's dealt with it, but going through it feels really uncomfortable. And then for a man, he doesn't have to fully deal with becoming dominant and dealing with all the fear that entails, right? So it's all a bunch of bullshit excuses. And I've been there. I've lived it. Seen it a bunch of times. So I really want men to be thinking about that. So if he asks me to lead, is that leading, or would you say no as a woman? Well, I wouldn't say no as a woman, because saying no is energetically masculine, right? So I would encourage you to express that in a feminine way. For example, expressing how you feel by having to lead. Let him know that. But yeah, ultimately, I wouldn't dishonor yourself by leading, even if he's leading you to lead. Or you could do it and then tell him how uncomfortable, you could submit to that leadership by stepping up and leading, because that's how you're submitting is. And then you tell him how uncomfortable you feel, so he knows now you've actually experienced it. And then hopefully he'll be like, oh, wow, I didn't want to burden you. Hopefully he'll find his balls and say that. When you started to feel devoted and began to lead, you stopped needing to express your feelings. Thank you. When I started to express my feelings, I stopped needing to lead. Oh, it's a really brilliant insight. It's a perfect reflection, right? It really is. And I think a lot of women would probably say the same thing, right? As long as you're stuck in that kind of leading thing and you're not moving into your feelings and being vulnerable, like that's your only kind of outlet, right? Because you've got all this shit inside you, you've got all these feelings, and how are you, like, your needs need to be met, and like, how are they going to be met? Well, you're going to try to lead your man to meet them, and it's not going to work well. But then when you have that other, it's like a pressure valve, right? You open that pressure valve, and no, I just express my feelings, and whatever happens, happens. And then, oh, now I don't feel like leading anymore. right? Wow, I can't believe I did that for so many years. I can't believe how terrible that was, all that leading that I did. Yeah, exactly. Is a man complaining about how stressed he is at work? Is that him expressing his emotions? To an extent, like I would say that would be really irresponsible. I mean, I think to a degree, a man expressing vulnerably is always irresponsible, but like it's irresponsible in the sense that he's not leading, right? He's not polarizing the relationship, he's depolarizing it. And on top of that, he's dumping that on you. Energetically, he's dumping that crap onto you. So yeah, that's crap. That's fully irresponsible. And it's irresponsible when a woman does it too. Any complaining is irresponsible, but I think it's even worse when a man does it. What if a man is about to have an operation where he has 99% chance of dying and he starts to cry? I mean, that's fine. You know, like I'm not saying that like a man should never ever express his feelings, right? Like if he, is absolutely, and like showing emotions as well. Like if he absolutely has to, it's not like it's the end of the world or anything. I had a child that died, right? And I've shown emotion in front of my wife, even as I was polarizing the relationship. um I couldn't contain it. Like that's a really messed up thing for someone to go through, right? And that's fine. And if a parent dies, or like grief is a different thing. And I think what you're sharing is kind of fits in there, where it's just like, yeah, that's a pretty that's a pretty heavy situation. But then if he starts using you as his therapist, well, that's another issue entirely. But that's a big one, right? That's a big one. 99% chance of dying. Yeah, that would be a big one. Yeah, like if he can't contain it, that's fine. But where, like, part of this is just like I want to make sure everyone understands this. This is not about being judgmental about men, right? Like it's not like I'm saying a man is bad or anything like that. If he does express emotions, if he has to, he has to. If he has no, like he just hasn't developed himself to that point, then he hasn't developed himself to that point. Just like if a woman starts leading, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I just didn't know how to express myself. Like she shouldn't be shamed for that or anything. It's just, she was depolarized in that moment, and now you can self-correct. My issue is more when men are justifying it, right? Men are justifying really being expressive emotionally with their woman, as if like that's what they should be doing. Just like if a woman was justifying, it's totally fine to teach my man and judge my man and lead my man. Well, that's much different when you're justifying it versus just it kind of happens, right? Like it happens during growth. It happens during growth, and you just continue to grow until it shifts to the point where that stuff doesn't happen anymore, and that's it. Yeah. So I think that's pretty much it that I wanted to say. But there is a growth path for men, and it doesn't involve feelings at all, right? Just like with women, where it's like there is this incredible growth path of feminine communication and expressing vulnerably and all this kind of stuff, and it just opens her up and softens her and allows her to let go of her guards, and over time she's just growing and growing that way. There's a very similar but opposite growth path for men, which involves not expressing feelings anymore and just becoming increasingly dominant, using dominant language, dominant communication, and leading, right? Increasingly leading, increasingly being the one that is in charge and is making the standards and the boundaries and directives and all that kind of stuff. So for any men that are interested in learning how to do that and really stepping out of your emasculation and stepping out of this kind of feminized feeling language, which, I mean, it's really, you're really selling your relationships short, or kind of sabotaging it completely, depending on where you are. You know, I can help with that, right? That's what I help men with. And if you are interested in that, I really encourage you to go to my website, relationshipofyourdreams.com, and check out the Dominant Man Academy, because this is what we can help you do. And like, it will really transform every aspect, not just of your love life, right? Like your love life for sure, where your woman's just going to start to respect you more. She's going to be more attracted to you. You're not going to have to deal with conflicts and you know, just bullshit that you don't want to have to deal with. Like, just imagine a relationship where your heart always feels fully open to your woman. You just always want to be giving to her. You always feel connected to her in that way. You just always want to serve her, right? That's what's possible when you truly polarize your relationship. You're not going to feel that way if you're sharing your feelings half the time and she's leading half the time. You can guarantee that, because we're not programmed that way. But you can get to the point in your relationship where you stay feeling that way. But you've got to do the work of polarizing yourself and polarizing the dynamic. That's what will help you do in the Dominant Man Academy. And then, of course, for any women watching this, it's the same deal for you. If you really want to do the work on this stuff and really shift into your feminine, really shift into being vulnerable, really shift into letting go of control, you know, check out the Radiant Woman Academy. That's what we do. You can completely transform and just learn to inspire your man to devote to you and lead the relationship without literally trying to do anything at all. It's just literally about being, not trying. And yeah, relationshipyourdreams.com. I think that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next time.